Welcome back to Disturbed Reality. Today's topic, at least in my opinion, is an extremely interesting one. Now, the video in question itself is a standard cartel execution, a beheading of a female to be exact. But for me personally, what sets this case aside was the mainstream coverage that it got, particularly here in the Western world. Now, while the mainstream media coverage didn't necessarily talk about the victim or why this happened or the wider issues involving this case, it did spread a light in relation to gore on social media. During the late 90s, the early 2000s, and basically through the first decade of the new millennium, the internet was a much more raw and uncensored place. As somebody who grew up in that era, I can definitely attest to that. There were numerous websites at the time who freely showed such content, such as LiveLeak, Ogreish, Rotten.com, and towards the late noughties, Best Gore. In short, during these times, it was much easier to find graphic content. It was just a Google search away. Anybody could find it, but despite that, it wasn't really a big issue amongst mainstream media. The issue only really became prevalent when social media started to grow and develop. Sites such as Twitter, Facebook, even MySpace back in the day had hundreds of millions of users. Most users shared cat videos, family videos, and just innocent content in general. But occasionally, somebody would share a video of much more heinous content. General shock videos, such as 2 girls, 1 cup, 1 man, 1 jar, these sort of things. And while they were definitely disgusting, the ante was upped when gore videos and murder videos were circulated on social media websites. This is when mainstream media really started to cover this topic. Now again, I'm currently 27 years old, I grew up in this generation, and the first case I can truly remember being covered by mainstream media in relation to gore on social media was the case of Luca Magnotta, aka the 1 lunatic, 1 ice pick video. Now I'm sure that you guys know what that is. I'm sure you've watched Don't Fuck With Cats on Netflix. But essentially the 1 lunatic, 1 ice pick video depicts the murder of an innocent man. He has his throat slit and then is basically dismembered in a horrible video. That video at the time it almost went viral. It was shared on numerous websites, including social media. And I remember mainstream media covering that particular case, and it raised the question of internet safety and that essentially large social media companies had a responsibility to filter this sort of content out so young people can't view it. This was the first case when I remember gore being covered by mainstream media, and that was definitely a big story at the time. But one story that eclipsed that, certainly in terms of mainstream media coverage, was the execution of an unknown Mexican woman. She's very often referred to as the Mexican Jane Doe, at least by mainstream media at the time, including the BBC. And this video at the time caused a lot of uproar, mainly because this video was uploaded directly to Facebook, unlike 1 lunatic, 1 ice pick, and 3 guys, 1 hammer. Those videos were originally shared on gore websites, and basically people would share the links on social media. Ultimately, it's extremely hard to police people sharing links on your website. However, it's a much different debate when you allow people to upload such content on your website. Facebook pretty much allowed this content to be uploaded on their website, basically under the impression that their users should be able to freely watch this sort of content and condemn such videos. At the time, Facebook were considering adding things such as warnings to such videos, but basically allowing them to stay up. Bear in mind, even at this point in time back in 2013, Facebook were a global conglomerate. They were a massive company worth multiple billions of dollars. And at this point in time, they were willing to allow such videos on their website. Fast forward to 2021, Look at how they operate now. They don't even encourage political discourse, discussions. Censorship on Facebook, Twitter, etc. is extremely heavy in the year 2021, and it wasn't that long ago these websites were willing to host such material. So given their history, it really does make me laugh that now they are so self-righteous and sanctimonious in regards to certain issues. You can't even have an opinion on certain topics on social media, otherwise you'll get banned. But a few years ago, they were allowing gore videos, murder videos, to be uploaded to their website. And don't get it twisted, while I'm not advocating for these sort of videos to be on mainstream social media, banning such content can lead to a slippery slope. And I think we see that today. Social media and the internet in general is much more censored, much more sanitized, and it isn't the experience, for better or worse, that it was back in the day. To me personally, growing up with the internet in the early 2000s compared to now, the internet now just seems a lot more soulless than it did back in the day. That's not to say the internet was perfect back in the day, of course it wasn't. There were heinous things going on the internet back in the day, heinous things being showed and freely available. However, I'm not convinced that today's alternative is any better. But anyway, enough of my rambling. Let's get into the video. As mentioned earlier, the video is a standard cartel execution. The video was uploaded in 2013. Ultimately, it was another brutal example of the war between the Los Zetas and the Gulf Cartel. During the early 2010s, this war was exceptionally brutal, and this was just another example of that. In fact, this war between the Gulf Cartel and the Los Zetas, this war really changed the narco world for the worst. It really added that militaristic aspect to the cartel world, and the brutality in this war is still being replicated till this day. In fact, there was once a time in the cartel world where women, despite maybe working for a cartel, they were rarely killed. But during this war between the Gulf Cartel and the Los Zetas, nobody was off limits. There were no rules, and we see that being replicated till this day. In recent years, we've seen videos of multiple executions of females and even children. The narco landscape is as brutal as it's ever been, and really this war was the turning point for the worst. But what happens in the video? Well, the video opens up with a female on her knees. A Los Zetas member is holding her by her hair and brandishing a knife, and he reads out a brief statement in a gruff voice. He says the following: "Well, gentlemen, this is what happens to all of those in the Gulf Cartel, on behalf of the Los Zetas." After he reads the statement, he then begins cutting into the woman's neck with a small knife. As he begins cutting, the woman starts to struggle. However, surprisingly, she makes little to no noise, which is quite rare for a beheading video. But as he continues to cut, you can see the life draining out of her body. There's a lot of blood, and she begins to stop struggling. Once she loses consciousness, the victim slumps back on her knees, and he basically finishes the job and removes her head. Once the head has been removed, he then holds it up to the camera, and it's actually said that you can still see her eyes moving after she's been beheaded. Now, the footage is extremely grainy, so it is kind of hard to tell. I have to say, it does look like that, but that could just be a glitch in the video recording. But after the head's been held up to the camera then pans back to her headless bloody corpse, and the video ends there. So yeah, it's definitely a brutal video, not one of the most brutal videos I've covered. However, you know, everything that came with this case, I found it kind of interesting, mainly because I remember this being a story at the time, and again, the media coverage at the time wasn't talking about the victim, or why this happened, the drug war, etc. They was talking about gore on social media, and what the social media companies need to do about these sort of videos. That was the topic at hand, and this video was really just a vehicle in which they used to really push this topic and put it into mainstream media. And yeah, this case is certainly one of the first in which I can remember where the mainstream media actually discussed gore online and everything that came with that, including the morality of hosting such videos and also safeguarding children. So it's definitely an interesting case and a significant case when it comes to online gore, there's no doubt about it. And I do recall this video being circulated. In fact, it wasn't just on Facebook where it was originally uploaded. You could actually watch this video on YouTube during a brief period of time back in 2013. Yes, the videos would get deleted, but they would get uploaded again, and you could watch this on YouTube back in 2013. And again, you know, going back to one of my original points, you know, I would say my generation were one of the first to really grow up with the internet, and I really do remember the internet back in the days. My parents first got their desktop PC in the early 2000s, that's when I first started using the internet, and during that sort of first decade of my internet use, the internet was almost like the Wild West, I guess I would say. You know, was it dangerous to a certain extent? Absolutely, but at the same time, the internet is still very dangerous today. But back in the day, the internet just felt like it had a lot more soul. There was less government interference in the internet. There were less global conglomerates siding with certain political ideologies, and basically people could just do their thing online. It's not really the case now. You know, I could get banned on Twitter for saying boo to a ghost. And, you know, for me, discourse is very important. And we don't really have that on social media today. In my opinion, a lot of people these days, they like to pigeonhole themselves into a certain group or a certain ideology, and they don't stray from that. I don't necessarily think this is a problem with just people on the internet. I think it's more of a problem with people in general in 2021. People are just extremely uneasy to have their viewpoints challenged, their ideology challenged on how they view the world, and to me that's unfortunate. To me that really is unfortunate. At the end of the day, you're cutting yourself off from personal growth, and even cutting yourself off from so many people in this world. And ultimately that's the way it is. We're infested with this dogmatic way of thinking, and that leads to what we have in society today, you know, which is things such as cancel culture, which in my opinion is toxic. Of course there are extremes. When somebody needs to be cast aside, I get that. But for me personally, I see many of these cancel culture cases, and for me they're not justified at all. They're not justified. I guess the best way I can explain it is, I'd rather live in a world of dangerous freedom more so than peaceful slavery. That's all I'll say. I know some of you guys will know what I'm getting at, but you know, YouTube, again, I can't say certain things. It's okay for me to talk about gore, that's fine, but if you challenge any narratives, then you're going to be in trouble, so I'm going to leave it at that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This commentary style was a little different. I'm not sure whether it's going to land or not, but I enjoyed making it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed watching it. And I also wanted to just thank you guys for helping me reach 100,000 subscribers. In my wildest dreams, I could never have imagined this happening. You know, I started uploading at the start of May, and here we are, man, in September. We're at 100,000 subscribers. That's absolutely insane. Like, I kind of think to myself, imagine a stadium of 100,000 people. It's just absolutely incredible. So I really do appreciate the support. Some of you guys have helped me out on videos. You've created artwork for my channel, which is absolutely insane, and I'm incredibly grateful. You've suggested video topics. You know, it really does help me out. So I just want to extend my gratitude to you guys. And yeah, I've got plans for the future. There's certain dreams I have. Whether I can do it on this channel or not, who knows, but a boy can dream, right? And the fact that you guys make it a little bit more possible is absolutely incredible. It really is. And I'm incredibly grateful. I really am. Also, I do plan on doing a live stream soon for you guys. Nothing special first time around, just a standard Q&A so I can talk to you guys. But you know, I do plan on doing that in the very near future, so watch out for that. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.